I'd like to talk a little bit about trauma. And Shelley says that amazing and so touching, so thrilled for you and for us that you can teach society something. Perhaps society will begin to understand better how to handle our traumatized youth. Yes. I experienced a lot of trauma as a young person. I lived with PTSD most of my life. One of the things that I did do to help my post-traumatic stress was I removed myself from society. The time that I took away from society actually took me away from that trauma and that the daily re-traumatization of my life, of myself. One of the things society does very well is to commodify time. And one of the things that people experiencing PTSD need is time. They need time to separate themselves from the re-traumatizing of their past. That's not always easy to do. But because we place so much value on time, especially monetary value on time, it costs a lot of money to have the appropriate treatments, to have time off, to get yourself well. I was able to do that unwittingly, unknowingly at the time, by going and living away from society. And that gave me that separation. And I had so much time. Even though I was doing myself a lot of harm in the end, I wasn't re-traumatizing myself by being shamed and stigmatized and having to struggle in that everyday way that we lived. So during that time in the forest, I was able to reflect on my past at my leisure, without expectation and without answering questions. And I was able to reflect on that and over time come to terms with a lot of stuff, start to understand a lot of things that happened to me. That was also a process where as I began to understand, I also learned that by blaming others for the way I was feeling wasn't doing me any good. I actually had to stop blaming people. And that helped me to come to terms and heal some of the trauma. I did a lot more trauma healing once I had left the forest and I made a decision to change who I was. That's when I could really begin to apply my thoughts and thinking from when I was living in the forest. And I brought all those thinking, all those thoughts and realizations out of the forest with me, and I started to apply them as I started to build a new life. And they included things like every time I get angry, I lose. And that's true today. And I still get angry today. I still, things annoy me and I get angry. But I still lose. Every time I get angry, I lose. And that's a very valuable lesson for me. And things like, how important is something? How important is it? If somebody says something and offends me, Yeah, it's it's not my mind that's being agitated by their thoughts. It only becomes mine if I take possession of it in my mind. So somebody says something to me, I get a choice. I can either let it play with my head or I can let it pass. And learning how to manage these things has helped me resolve a lot of that trauma from the past. I think to myself, I used to be the victim. Yeah. I lived in that constant state of I'm hurting. I'm hurting because of my past. But then as I started to work through that and as I started to put things into place to help me deal with that, and I'll talk more about that as we move along and I have more talks. I'll touch on this quite regularly because it's an important topic. So as I started to put these things into my life, like how important is it, and it'd be there at the end, a really important one. Just small goals. Just have a small goal, achieve the small goal, start to build a bit of self-value, self-worth, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But I'll go back to the beginning. Time. Time is the one thing that we all need to heal trauma. But it's what we do with that time that's important, and how we fill that time, and how we manage that time, how we treat ourselves during that time.